Yeah. Trying to let more people come in. Welcome, welcome. Pura vida. Why? Welcome. Yeah. Uh-huh. Wow. Oh, wow, yeah. Pura vida, mi gente. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, thanks for tuning in once again. I appreciate you guys taking the time to be here. All right, just gonna get going, even if it's just 30 of you guys so far. But let's go. We're gonna go ahead and just seal the deal with this topic right here. I've actually you know, starting like my first video was like 7 years ago when I talked about the colored hockey league and the influence they had, right? And today we're gonna get a little deeper, You know, I've done updates 4 years ago, showing the whole history before that, right? And when it comes to American Indians, we're gonna do a little combination of all that, and just seal the deal when it comes to this history. It's like you guys are gonna see by the end of the video how obvious it is who really influenced what we think of as modern competitive hockey. All right, we have a whole wrong perspective on it because it has been taught to us with like a whitewash superiority history, you know. You guys know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Appreciate your patience while I'm live. All right. Just setting everything up. I got mad things open. All right. So real quick, we're gonna go back and forth. We're gonna go through books. We're gonna go through a lot of things. All right. Wow. Somebody DK just saying, yeah, I don't know, I'm just saying, yeah, I get it. I get out of my channel. No, this ain't about AI art. This is gonna be about the history of hockey, the real founders of hockey, the real creators, innovators, inventors of games like this. That's what we're gonna talk about today. Hey, moderators, make sure to block out any trolls. It's funny because you have to be subscribed at least for a day. So that's how sad these people are, man. Like, don't come here joke right now. So I asked ChatGPT right away one day. I was like, hey, and this is what I said, guys. I said, origin of modern hockey game, Nova Scotia. Negroes. That's what I said. I didn't even ask a question. That's all I said. That's how I started the conversation. Usually when you chat with ChatGPT, you know, it just starts talking. Whatever you put, it starts babbling back to you. Yeah, we're not talking about all over the world. We're talking about the originators. We already know America's a true world. We got so many sports created over here. Rubber balls is what you don't understand. The concept of balls and rubber balls. That's from here, man. Rubber's from here, man. Native, the trees are native to the Americas where rubber comes from. You don't understand. We've been doing this since ancient times. We got ball courts older than Egypt, man. Older than Ethiopia. Ball courts. Catch up, Garrett. Catch up on the presentations. I'm just talking to somebody in the live chat, guys. His message got deleted. I don't know, but I saw it. He said there's stickball games all over the world, including Ethiopia, like that. Everybody want to always include. Not understanding, man. We passed all that. I heard all that stuff all my life. They never told us about what we're learning today, man. So pay attention, man. Pay attention, please. So ChatGPT says, yes, Nova Scotia is central to the origin of the modern hockey game. And Black Nova Scotians were a major part of shaping the game into its modern form. Okay? We're gonna break it down, guys. Again, you saw what I said to ChatGPT. I didn't ask it anything. That's how I started the conversation. It's just automatically said. It says, number one, most serious origins. Traditions plays the development of modern ice hockey in Nova Scotia, especially Windsor, Halifax, and Dartmouth. Windsor, Nova Scotia is often called the birthplace of hockey. Early written evidence and later 19th century references place organized ice games there in the early 1800s. Nova Scotia's own provincial hockey body explicitly says the province preserves some of the earliest records of the game, alongside mik'mac stick-making contributions and Black League innovations. Halifax and Dartmouth are equally important because the sport was organized, refined, and spread outward from there. All right. The ChatGPT gave me images and everything. I didn't even ask for any of that. I said origin of modern hockey game, Nova Scotia, and I said Negroes. It gave me the whole breakdown, right? So before I continue, right, we're gonna be going back and forth. All right. When most people, just study hockey or they go to the history of the NHL, right? The history of the National Hockey League, it tells you, right? This is what it tells you, right? Wikipedia, right? Begins with the end of its predecessor league, the National Hockey Association, in 1917, after unsuccessfully attempting to resolve disputes with Eddie Livingston, owner of the Toronto Blue Shirts. Executives of the three other NHL franchises suspended the NHA and formed the National Hockey League. NHL replacing the Livingston team with a temporary team in Toronto. The arenas, the NHL's first quarter century saw the league compete against two rival major leagues, the Pacific Coast Hockey Association and Western Canada Hockey League, for players in the Stanley Cup. The NHL first expanded into the United States in 1924 with the founding of the Boston Bruins. Okay, so you see how this started in 1917s, 1920s, really, the NHL. So I just showed you the Color League was way before that. Color League was way before that, right? And then it's talking about Boston Bruins is when they got to the United States. Bruins, huh? The first NHL team, huh? In the United States, huh? That's big because what is Bruins? Bruins in Dutch means brown or dark complexion. Bruins, the Boston dark complexions, because it was based on a lot of the teams have Indian names. You guys will notice that with hockey, lacrosse, field hockey, and things like that, because that's where it comes from. All right, so you can keep reading this Wikipedia page, and it's not going to talk about the Color League or anything before that at all. And it's going to give credit to Montreal as the founder of hockey and all that, right? So I'm just showing you this as an example that they don't teach you history. They don't teach you real history. Going back real quick. Let me just go back real quick. It says here, ChatGPT says Black Nova Scotians and the modern style of hockey where Black Nova Scotians become especially important is in the transition from early pond hockey. From early pond hockey, what does that mean? That's important to understand. We're going to read about that. Basically, who was in Nova Scotia, who was in Halifax, is what you got to have. It's the context most people don't have and don't understand. These places where they're saying hockey originated, guys, these were black towns in general at the time. The Indians and black folks, the local people that were there and being settled by a lot of so-called black folks. So colored people all over the place, right? It says the Colored Hockey League. So it says where Black Nova Scotians became especially important in the transition from the early pond hockey into the fast modern game. The children were playing in ponds. The Indians were already doing it for thousands of years, probably. Like, we're going to talk about that history. All right? We're going to go over that history again so you guys can get understanding of where this is really coming from and who in modern times is literally getting the credit, really, but not getting the credit in history. But we're going to talk about that. So the Colored Hockey League of the Marine Times founded in Nova Scotia in the 1890s, right? So way before the NHL, 1890s, right? Was one of the earliest organized black hockey systems in North America. It was based around communities in Halifax, Africville, Dartmouth. So Halifax and Dartmouth, Hammonds Plains, Truro, and Amherst. Their style was described as faster, more physical, more acrobatic, more strategic. Historians widely credit this league with innovations later seen in mainstream hockey, including the slap shot, goaltenders dropping to the ice, early butterfly style, more open attacking play. These are major elements of the modern game, okay? These are modern elements. So who invented modern hockey? ChatGPT says the most accurate historical answer is Nova Scotia helped develop the early game. But look what they're saying. Mik'mac peoples contributed important stick technology and earlier stick and ball traditions. And then who else? Black Nova Scotians helped transform it into the modern fast style. So we're talking about Indians and black folks, huh? In general. Pay attention. So if your focus is modern hockey as we recognize it today, Black Nova Scotians are absolutely foundational, especially through the Colored Hockey League. A strong historical phrasing would be the roots of hockey are in Nova Scotia, but Black Nova Scotians were among the key creators of the modern style of the game. Right? Very important, guys. You gotta understand there's a traceable origin of the rules, the styles, the techniques of modern day hockey to the color league. Not to anything they're saying before that. Oh, there was white leagues. We're gonna talk about that. There was white leagues before the color league. These were clubs, guys. They weren't even real leagues. Yeah, they played against each other, but who are they really copying? These so-called white folks did not just create the game out of thin air, and that's what I'm going to make a point of today. All right, we're going to break it down, the hijack story and the true story. So that is more accurate, right? What we're saying right now than the simplified story that only later Montreal or white leagues created hockey. You see, it was the Black Nova Scotians among the key creators of the modern style of the game. Okay. All right, so real quick, we're gonna switch up. Let's see. All right, let's go to this. We're gonna get into this book real quick. All right, how many people we got here? 66 only. Okay, well, eventually everybody else will see one day. One day they'll understand and watch and care. Okay, what we're doing here, what we're really breaking down and teaching here. Because we're not trying to blackwash, we're trying to correct history. You got to give the credit what the credit is due. All right. So it says here, this is truly one of the most fascinating sports books ever written. This is written by George and Daryl Fosty, or the Fosty brothers. It's called Black Ice. All right, make sure to buy it. Support the authors. If you know, the physical copy, if you guys interested, you know, it's a pretty good book when it comes to this history. The Lost History of the Colored Hockey League of the Marine Times, 1895 to 1925. All right. Hey, word. He said word. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, man. You know, these books ain't easy to get, right? Like, yeah. We're going to go to the introduction real quick. Let me just read the introduction, I guess, since we're here live. The soul of a people. The soul of a people. It is claimed that the freedman cannot endure a northern and western climate, that the winters are too severe for him never was a greater mistake. While it is true the colored man, as he goes north into colder regions, adapts himself with ease to the climate, in no part of our country does he show more robust health, finer physical development and endurance, and consequent longevity than in the western and northern portions of our country, huh? Adaptable to any part of the world, man. It says here, a new Negro for a new century, an accurate and up-to-date record of the upward struggles of the Negro race by Booker T. Washington. Oh man, the hijack, black. The Negro and black. Who you calling all these tags, man? Like, what is the genealogy of all these people, right? That went to Nova Scotia that you're calling African Americans or black loyalists, right? In different eras, or maroons. There's a whole history here, guys. There's a whole history here. So it says Nova Scotia is considered the birthplace of modernized hockey. The quantity and convenience of natural ponds ideal for skating, combined with the British tradition of shiny. The British tradition of shiny, that's not British, guys. That's indigenous. We're going to break it down. We're going to break that down. We're going to show all the history before all of this. So it says bandy and hurley as well, along with the local Mi'kmaq Indian version of the game. No, that is the original version of the game, man. Which help facilitate the geographic and social conditions necessary for the development and creation of the game we now know as Canadian hockey. Citing a British military diary in the 18th century, author Thomas H. Randall explains this unique fusion in his book, Warring of the North. He writes, It is a fact, little known in Canada, but a fact nonetheless, that ice hockey, Canada's national game, began on the Dartmouth Lakes in the 18th century. Dartmouth, right? Dartmouth, right? In the Dartmouth Lakes. Says here, the Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes, founded in Nova Scotia in the 1890s, was one of the earliest organized black hockey systems in North America. It was based around communities, and so these are some of the, not all, but of the so-called black community. So Halifax and what? Dartmouth, right? Dartmouth. So where's the hockey beginning? All right, Dartmouth. All right, so let's go back. Okay. Hold on, guys. My fault. Okay. Around the Dartmouth Lakes in the 18th century. Here, the garrison officers found the Indians. Who they found there? Playing a primitive form of hockey. Primitive. Who says it's primitive? That's the hijack. On the ice, huh? So they saw the Indians playing a primitive form of hockey on the ice. Adopted and adapted it. So they what? They adopted and adapted what the Indians were doing. What Indians? I want to see. I can't see the chat. 1 second. Okay, here we go. All right, how many people we got now? We got 60 still. All right, it's all good, man. It's all good. So, real quick. I got mad things open. I just want to keep going back and forth. Right? Says here, beyond the blue line, how black Nova Scotians invented modern hockey, right? We're talking about McFadden, Finch, Foundation.org. Did you know the slap shot wasn't born in the high budget arenas of the NHL? For decades, the history book suggested that the fastest, most aggressive moves in hockey were the product of mainstream Canadian development. But if you dig beneath the permafrost of Nova Scotia's history, you'll find that the modern game was actually pioneered by the sons and grandsons of escaped enslaved people and black loyalists. That's the hijack. So, a lot of people were free. A lot of people, were coming from their indenture or escaping their so-called servitude. And black loyalists, what is a black loyalist? And who are you talking about? Show me the genealogy. Believe it or not, a lot of those black loyalists are straight European, straight black European guys. A lot of them, of course, mixed with Indians. Before that, they had already been in the States for, generations, a lot of them. It includes your indigenous people, your ancestors too, as well, that were on the loyalist side, like the ones that you had in your family. But a lot of these are straight black Europeans, a lot of these black loyalists too. If you do the genealogy, start picking them up one by one, you start seeing what I'm talking about. So it says these athletes didn't just play the game, they reinvented it under the banner of the Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes. So we got so-called blacks, Negroes, Indians playing hockey. So what do we know about reclassification and how people got paper genocided and all that? So what are we really talking about here? So who are they copying and adapting? So, guys, a lot of the history books of the people of Canada, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, the Indians I'm talking about, the primary sources describe these people as swarthy, copper colored, dark, very swarthy, brown, brune. And so that's the other thing. When we talking about colored league, what does colored league mean? Does colored league mean Africans or people mixed with African ancestry? No, right? No, right? Didn't they call Indians free colored? Didn't they reclassify Indians as well? And also that could include black Europeans that are free. Black European descendants mixed with Indians, a whole bunch of different kind of possibilities and complex genealogies. But the fact is colored folks, right? So-called black folks. And supposedly they're copying the Indians, right? But what if these black folks are Indians too? You get it? So they try to separate the history, like, oh, these escaped slaves. They try to make the Africans, right? Oh, came in, mixed with the Indians and copied the Indians. See, that's a whole hijack story is what I'm trying to break down little by little. So it says the technical soul of modern hockey, from the slap shot to the butterfly goaltending style, is rooted in the community resilience of Black Nova Scotians. By examining the colored hockey league, we see a blueprint for how marginalized communities use community leadership and grassroots innovation to transform culture. Okay, so it goes on and on. Here's a little image, pretty cool image. Yeah, just picture, this is what I'm saying, the pawn, transforming pawn games. See, the Indians were doing this already, guys, right? So who are they copying? Copying their own people, copying their family, copying, they probably did that where they were coming from. Their folks were, they had their own type of stick games, maybe in places where it's not so hot. It's Indians will be Indians, right? So anyways, that's another cool image right here. Yeah, see the slap shot, boom. A dynamic, high-energy painting of a black hockey player from the 19th second powerful slap shot. Wood shavings and knives flying. So that's the AI image or whatever. But okay. The all-black league that invented hockey as we know it. Jasper Hudson. You guys understand? It's not just me, man. Like, picture in your mind what hockey looked like at the turn of the 20th century. What, where, and who do you see? Set your mental image in Canada. If you haven't already, as the game had yet to spread much below the border, you probably imagine a less formal affair. Games played on ponds and small rings and not in packed arenas. The ticks of wood in the players' paddles and without helmets. The sport itself is a slower, more methodical, and any contact is incidental. And when you picture organized hockey's earliest players, they're probably white, right? That's what they got us. That's what they always made us picture, right? Oh, that's a white man's game, right? That's what you thought. That's what we thought. I mean, at least me, I was born in 82, growing up in the 80s and 90s. Like, that's what I believed, because that's what they kind of portrayed. I was ignorant. As a group of Black Canadian intellectuals and churchmen of the time looked at the sport and saw the same thing and decided that simply because things were the way they were, that wasn't how they had to be. So the explanation's funny. Anyways, you guys see where it's going, right? Well, I was looking for something I had open. There we go. So Nova Scotia, right? Nova Scotia has a couple of historical so-called migrations of so-called Black folks, right? But not only migrations, remember the people there already, the Indigenous people were people of color. People that could be reclassified. People that were reclassified in historical accounts in the 1500s, as we've shown in my slavery videos. People from Newfoundland and Nova Scotia being brought to Seville, Spain, Lisbon, Portugal, and being reclassified as Negroes there. We've shown the sources. This is real history. So what I'm trying to say is we got to dodge the hijack when the whole Black culture or Black colored, because these are tags, guys. That doesn't talk about people's genealogy or ancestry, like specifically. So I understand the culture part, but not the crayon color. You get what I'm saying? Don't allow yourself to be called a crayon colored. What culture is that specifically you're talking about? Because you have a lot of different ancestors. All right. So yeah, eventually all that unites and becomes part a culture. And it says here, Black migrations in Nova Scotia, right? Peoples of that have color, right? Descent are a vibrant part of Nova Scotia's past. These individuals make Nova Scotia home and contributed to the fabric and success of today's province. Nova Scotia can be said to be the birthplace of Black culture and heritage in Canada. Like, listen, this is Black folks were really deep here, guys. Like, they were the Nova Scotians, really. They try to say, oh, Black Nova Scotians and white Nova Scotians. Who was the majority, really? That's what people don't have context with. They were the majority, really, guys. Boosting the largest indigenous black community, indigenous black community in Canada. They're letting you know something here, talking about African, but then you're saying indigenous black. Huh. So today, these rich settlers make up the colored Nova Scotia community, and today, over 400 years later, call Nova Scotia home. 400 years of recorded black folks in Nova Scotia. And this is where hockey's coming from, right? You guys understand what I'm trying to like let you have all the context historically. They settled in 52 historic communities, such as some of the well-known communities of Shelburne, Africville, East Preston, Annapolis, Royal, Cherrybrook, Halifax. All right, Halifax. Hockey came Sydney, Spring Hill, North Preston, and Beachville, to name a few. Just to name a few. There's way more. Just to name a few. So in the 1780s, right, we got a story of migration of 3,500 supposed number, right? This probably could be more or less black loyalists who fled to what is now Nova Scotia and New Brunswick at the close of the American Revolution. What's going on? What does that mean? That means these people were on the British side, guys. That means these people were on the British side, right? When it came to the American Revolutionary War, and not on the American side, right? So that doesn't mean they were, all the evil guys. That doesn't mean they're all Europeans. None of that. You got to remember that the 5 civilized tribes were also on the British side during the American Revolutionary War, if you guys didn't know. The 5 civilized tribes, yeah, Creek, Choctaw, Chickasaw, so-called Cherokees, they were on the British side as well. Now, were there colored folks on the 5 civilized tribes as Indians? Yes, right? Yes, right? So could these so-called black loyalists also include some of the 5 civilized tribe people? Yeah, could. That's what I'm saying. We got to know each individual who you're talking about. Who are these black loyalists? Show me the names and the genealogy so I can look it up and let me know, so I can know who they are really. So this is what I'm saying. So in these so-called black loyalists could be Indian descendants, right? Coming from other parts of America. A lot of them could be mixed with black Europeans already as well. So it could be half and half. But what I'm saying is we got to know each case individually, guys, right? So we got this case though of a migration of so-called black folks to Nova Scotia. That's a lot right there. That, when it comes to, a couple generations later, as they multiply, how many, you see how that would, increase, right? Just this migration alone. But look what it says here. They had fought for Britain and returned for freedom. Supposedly they were all slaves. That's not true. Not everybody who was black, who fought on the British side, was doing it because they was a slave. That's a hijack. So it says, once in the Marine times, over there in Nova Scotia, they were cheated of land. Just like the Indians, huh? They were cheated of land, forced to work on public projects such as roads and buildings, and denied equal status. Damn. And then it says a lot of these people, look, they're saying about 1,000 of these people, women and children, left to Sierra Leone, went to Africa, West Africa. See, we colonized West Africa mostly. And that's what another thing people don't understand about, the influence so-called Americans have in the early years of a lot of these West African countries. The 1796, nearly 600 Trelawney Maroons from Jamaica, exiled from Jamaica, arrived in Marine times. So now we got Maroons coming. What is a Maroon? Supposedly it's runaway, right? What is a runaway? Well, it comes from the word cimarron, fast like an arrow, uncatchable. But maroon also means maroon, means colored. Cimarron also means a brownish shade. So Maroons runaways could include American Indians and Black Europeans, guys. Like, just picture a Jacobite rebel. We're talking about 1796, right? Because a lot of these Maroons coming from Jamaica had Jacobite last names. Believe it or not, they had Jacobite last names. Highlander last names, Highlander families. And a lot of them became leaders in Nova Scotia, as they were leaders of the Maroons and Jamaicans. They had a lot of clout. So again, we got Indians and Black Europeans, again, coming up. 1796. So many different migrations, right? And then it says roughly 2,000 US Black refugees from War of 1812 settled in maritime. So then again in the 1800s, in the early, literally, this is the time they're saying the first reports of people playing hockey on ponds are said to happen in Nova Scotia and Halifax around this time, when 2,000 more so-called U.S. blacks are arriving as refugees from the War of 1812. You guys see all the history we're missing out on? You see, you guys gotta understand, the majority of Nova Scotia was colored folks. It wasn't the other way around. So who is really being observed playing in the pond games that these white elite clubs eventually copied and created their little social clubs to play sports and hockey, supposedly, before the color league? And you guys are going to see there's no names at all, no roster players, no names of the founders of this club. Just mention of it. Some images there, which I don't trust too. Anyways, so 1833, slavery officially abolished in British Empire. 1920s, hundreds of Caribbean immigrants later. Listen, even in the 1900s, more black folks coming, so-called black, right? Caribbean people, whatever ancestry they got, mostly Indian, American, Indigenous, and like European ancestry, a lot of it. So it's called the later arrivals. They flocked to Cape Breton to work in the coal mines and the steel factory, all right? So all the way since the 1600s, Matthew da Costa, that was a Portuguese Sephardic Jew, he was black. They tried to make him a slave, but he wasn't a slave. He was the captain, he was that, So anyways, but apart from that, the indigenous people that were there were already, also people of color, right? So when it comes to the colored league, right, it could include so many different Indians and Black Europeans, right? Not what they want us to think, like these are all descendants of African slaves. Go back to the book real quick. It says, our knowledge of the roots of Canadian hockey has been based almost solely on the historical records maintained by early so-called white historians. Because of this, the misconception that hockey is a white man's invention has persisted. We know today such an assumption could not be further from historical fact. The ancient roots of early Canadian hockey originate with the North American Indians. Okay? And these are black folks letting you know. And they're the ones writing this book, knowing the history. They probably are descendants of these people that played, the first hockey players, right? The real competitive hockey players on ice, creating all the modern techniques. They're telling you, nah, man, this came from the American Indians. The roots of modern Canadian hockey originate in large part from the influence of an even more surprising source, that of the early so-called Black Canadian hockey, okay? For it was black hockey players in the later half of the 19th century whose style of play and innovations helped shape the sport, effectively changing the game of hockey forever. The earliest recorded evidence of organized modern Canadian hockey games dates from 1802 in and around the area known as Long Pond near King College School and Windsor, Nova Scotia. Though the historical record is sketchy, it appears quite possible that the mik'macs and their subsequent European Canadian counterparts, who's that? European could include Black Europeans, were not the only Nova Scotians who enjoyed the sport. But certainly we can only date black hockey to the early 1870s, yet we know that hockey and black history in Nova Scotia have parallel roots going back almost 100 years. Okay, that we just showed what he was talking about, right? The black loyalists and all that. And apart from that, who was there already, right? So among the first reports of hockey being played occur in 1815. That's when I was saying that migration from the 1812 war, refugees of black folks that were coming. Yeah, around this time, look, now they got so many people there now, even more new people. That's when they start reporting hockey. These are all black towns, guys. These are all black towns where this is starting. So along the isolated northwest arm south of Halifax. The date is important for the simple fact that as late as October 1815, the region was not home to a large white settlement, okay, but was instead the site of a small black enclave, all right? These were so-called black towns. 4 black families originally from the Chesapeake Bay area. Wow, look at the history, guys. From the Chesapeake Bay area, they had come, with a total of 15 children had relocated and settled on the arm. It is reported that these families, Cooney, Williams, Monroe, and Leal, received adequate food, lodging, and employment, implying that their children were healthy and would have been able to play hockey during the winter months when the arm was frozen and suitable for skating. Were these children among the first Canadians to play the game of hockey? He's asking, right? Like, why not, guys? These are children, right? And if they have Indigenous ancestry, they would know about all the stick games that the Indians did, that the ancestors did, right? Or even if they just saw the Indians, the so-called local Indians playing it, they will play too, right? We do not know. He says, all we can say is that the coincidence between the date of the Northwest Arms Black settlement and the first records of hockey being played in the area are worthy of reflection. As early as 1828, hockey had been reportedly played on Dartmouth. All right, Dartmouth again, with black folks are settling, with black towns. Nova Scotia's Lake Bannock, an area inhabited by poor whites and blacks. Overall, the Dartmouth area, so who are these poor whites too? That could be status. What do they look like? Or could it be people passing for white as well? That is the context we need. That is the context we need to ask for. It says, overall, the Dartmouth area consisted of a chain of 23 lakes used for centuries as a major navigational route by the Mik'macs. Shout out to the Mik'macs. It was a place where thousands came to skate and a perfect place for Canadian hockey to develop. At the time, it was considered the most popular place where people, regardless of race, could come to skate and to play hockey. At the Shubenacadie Canal, where it entered Lake Bannock and the adjacent Sullivan's Pond, hockey was becoming a common winter activity. This implied evidence suggests that black Canadians, some of who only a few years earlier settled in Canada as runaway slaves, again, not all of them were runaway slaves, that's the hijack. Unfortunately, that's what the author believes, had been playing organized hockey. They had been, but either way, black folks been playing organized hockey. Organized hockey meaning they already had competitions if it's organized, but it's not being acknowledged, right, by history, because the so-called white man didn't create it or start it, right, or make it official. But they're having organized hockey games already, way back, way before the 1880s, where we're gonna read supposedly when the hockey officially became competitive. It was supposedly white folks before the color league. And again, they have no names. And they admit that it was totally different than when the colored league came about, which all these techniques of modern hockey actually came from in the rules and everything. So it says, so they were already doing organized hockey, non-segregated pickup games. They're having competitive games already on frozen ponds and lakes throughout Nova Scotia. This was a real thing already, way before. As far back as the 1820s. You see what I'm saying, guys? The family history, the oral traditions, other people's primary source accounts, which are scattered throughout numerous primary sources of people from those times are writing in their journals of history. They're telling, yeah, these people are playing this type of game. Of course, they're not going to say, oh, he did a slap shot, because that type of terminology wasn't around back then. They would describe something like that differently. Oh, a powerful swing from the stick to the, a different way than saying a slap shot. So even though they're saying all this started in the 1820s, we're going to see we're gonna see how Indians were already doing all this stuff. How do we know Indians weren't doing slap shots and all that? You get what I'm saying? Yeah, so it says at the time, given the lack of communications and written sources, see, they're not writing it and making it official. Few would have placed any importance to the games, as they simply were a form of entertainment to occupy the long, drawn-out season that was typically a Canadian winter. By the mid-1850s, ice hockey had evolved in popularity to a point where it was common throughout Nova Scotia. In 1861, John Forbes developed a skate that could be adjusted with single lever, eliminating the need for screws and plates. Produced by the Dartmouth-based Star Skates manufacturing company, the invention and mass production of the skate ensured that by 1863, skates were instantly accessible and affordable to the general public. From 1863 to 1939, aside from the demand in Nova Scotia, Star would ship over 11 million skates worldwide. In Canada, artificial ice arenas sprang up and hockey began to develop a national following. In 1863, the same year, Forbes revolutionized the skate. The first covered rink built in Canada was constructed on the grounds of the Halifax Horticultural Garden. With the first rinks, the evolution of hockey in Nova Scotia took a turn that would forever change the direction of the game and the way it was played. So popular was the game, in and around Halifax, that the first official Canadian rules, known simply as the Halifax Rules, were published in order to standardize the play. These rules would define Canadian hockey for generations. In a race to claim credit for the rules and the origin of the game of hockey, a number of socially conscious individuals announced themselves as the game's originators. Some of them went so far as to write and publish their own versions of the official rules in order to aid in their declarations. Due to social standings, many would be credited with their false declarations. Falsehoods that exist to this day. You see, the wrong people took credit. You know, this was a racial thing eventually, right? This disfranchisement, what they were doing in general, right? To the so-called black folks of the Americas. From the 1880s to the mid-1890s, hockey continued to spread across Canada, yet no evidence exists to indicate that black hockey players had been allowed to join white teams. Not a single black name appears to own unknown championship rosters of the time, inferring that they remained separate of the mainstream. Given the skills of the players, had they been allowed access to white leagues, many would have surely emerged as some of the so-called best players of their regions. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. These clubs, these were clubs, guys. Before the color league, they were social, rich, elite clubs. And they have like, there's this one book that talks about it with, you know, have white pictures and everything, but they don't give names of the people. They have no rosters of the people. Telling me to go through newspaper archives, and I'm like, man, I don't even know how to even access all that. And then, you know, no names for the founders of these places, like these gardens where they're saying it started, like the Wanderers Garden Grounds. We're gonna read about. They're getting the credit before the color league, but there's no names I can follow up on, and there's no real proof that Negroes and Indians didn't also compete with these club members. You know, that's the thing. So, unfortunately, in keeping with the elitism of the day, only the games and influences of the upper classes and their teams and leagues were recorded for posterity. It was the Englishman Lord Stanley of Preston, the 6th Governor General of Canada, and the 16th Earl of Derby, who gave the name its most sought-after prize. In 1892, Lord Stanley sent his aide, Captain Charles Colville, to England to purchase a trophy envisioned as being an annual Challenge Cup awarded to the recognized amateur champions of Canada. For a mere £10, Colville purchased what has become the oldest and most prestigious trophy in North American sports. Within a season, the first Challenge Cup Championship, later nicknamed the Stanley Cup, would take place in Canada. All right, you see where they get the Stanley name from, guys? So Lord Stanley's concepts of sport were in keeping with his time. During the 19th century, had been the English. This is when they had hijacked it, right? It had been the English who had introduced the concept of competitive sports to much of the world. So they took credit. The English took credit for soccer, like mass sports during this time, not just hockey. You know, dodged the hijack. Soccer, man. Come on now. Rubber balls and softball playing. Come on, that's from over here, man. Come on now. Pele's from here, man. Stop playing with me, man. It says, in the age of the Victorians and Victorian ideals, sports were regarded as models of teamwork and fair play. Many believed that sports could raise the lower classes and non-white races to a higher level. Oh, you mean the incubators? And not, That's what you're talking about. Because you copied the colored folks. You wanted to raise yourself from to a higher level of civilization. All was well. The theory held as long as white men continued to win at whatever sport they played, hockey was no different. By recognizing Canadian hockey, Stanley had accomplished something more. He has given the game royal acceptance, removing its status as a game of the lowly masses and creating an entire sport based on club elitism and commercialism. You see, what is he talking about? That because this was all colored folks and so-called minorities and Indians and all that playing this at the time. So they was considered a low class, all these sports, right? All these sports, football, basketball, all that. These people that they give credit to inventing these games didn't invent it, guys. You guys know that, right? We've gone over this over the years. But it was given royal acceptance. Now they can play it because it's not considered, uncivilized game, of the low classes, right? So at the time of his presentation, it was symbol for self-promotion of all the while serving a supposed need. In time, those who controlled the Challenge Cup control hockey. Okay, who controlled the what? Now, anybody who actually had now, if black folks had already and Indians had their own kind of leagues and competitions, they weren't recognized. If you weren't under the Stanley Cup teams, right? So this is the Challenge Cup they're talking about that controlled hockey, effectively created a burgeoning sport. A sport that now, by its very nature, would exclude and fail to recognize black contributions. Wow. So literally, guys, this is like when they did segregation, colored only, like this franchise folks, like in Black Wall Street. Like this is the same thing. How gentrification, how they do gentrification in the neighborhood, same kind of thing. In the early 1880s, within Nova Scotia and the other Canadian maritime provinces, urbanized black communities formed separate sporting clubs. Semi-professional black baseball teams began touring the region, playing exhibition matches against other rural colored Canadian clubs, right? By the 1890s, with the newfound interest in sports sweeping Canadian society, all black baseball sports clubs were well established throughout the province of Nova Scotia as well as other parts of eastern Canada. By the 1900s, all black maritime baseball championship was being held in many areas of the country. Scheduled leagues were in place as so-called barnstorming. Black teams toured the Canadian countryside, competing against each other in local white clubs. By the mid-1890s, these are all black sport clubs function year-round as these same baseball players turned their attention to the winter sport of hockey. In an era when many believed blacks could not endure cold, possessed ankles too weak to effectively skate, and lacked the intelligence for organized sport, dodged the hijack, man, these men defined myths. Come on, man. Who was saying that? Like, who was hating like that? Like, come on now. Don't tell me it was a so-called, I'm not even going to say it. It says segregated for their white counterparts, black Canadians would create their own hockey league. Their style of hockey was revolutionary. It was fast-moving, tough, acrobatic, exciting, and entertaining. Listen, athleticism and skill were the hallmarks of the teams, and their fast-flowing and skilled style of hockey would years later be reputed to have been 40 years ahead of its time. 40 years ahead of its time, man. All right. The first recorded mention of all black hockey teams appears in 1895. Games between black club teams were arranged by formal invitation. Following the matches, the host teams often entertained the visiting squad with an after-game dinner. You always a pizza, you always dinner. That's a good one, right? By 1900s, the Colored Hockey League of the Marine Towns had been created, headquartered in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Despite hardships and prejudice, the league would exist until the mid-1920s. What happened in the mid-1920s, Historically speaking, the Colored Hockey League was like no other hockey or sport league before or since. Primarily located in a province reputed to be the birthplace of Canadian hockey. And again, these are black towns. The league would in time produce a quality of player and athlete that would rival the best of white Canada. Such was the skill of the teams that they would be seen by as worthy candidates for local representation in the annual national quest for Canadians hockey's ultimate prize, the Stanley Cup. 25 years before the Negro baseball leagues in the United States and 22 years before the birth of the National Hockey League, all right, Black Canadians helped pioneer the sport of ice hockey, changing this winter game from the primitive gentleman's pastime of the 19th century to the modern, fast-moving game of today, played by skilled and educated leadership. The Colored League would emerge as a premier force in Canadian hockey and supply the resilience necessary to preserve a unique culture, a culture that exists to this day. Unfortunately, such was their fate, that their contributions were conveniently ignored or simply stolen, as white teams and hockey officials copied elements of the black style or sought to take self-credit for black hockey innovations, guys. This is real history. This is a tragedy, really, when it comes to historically. And when it comes to colored folks, right? How the history is being whitewashed and everything. Literally the credit stolen, everything. Like, it's not really mentioned, it's not really taught correctly. And we fell for it. We forgot. We believed their false narratives, their whitewashed history. We thought it was a white man's game. Growing up, at least I did. And most everybody around me did. I didn't know anybody that ever told me this until I started doing my videos. Right? The Colored Hockey League was one of the most complex sports organizations ever created. It was a league led by Baptist ministers and church laymen. Yeah, you hear that? Natural leaders and proponents of black pride. Black pride. These men represented a concept in sports never before seen, right? So if they're black loyalists, not black ministers, These men represented a concept in sports never before seen. Their rule book was the Bible. Their game book, the words, oral history, and lessons derived from the experiences of the black struggle and the Underground Railroad, huh? Didn't they, man, see, this is what I'm saying. They copied the Acadians going back to Canada. Remember, Acadians were swarthy when they had been, when they went through their diaspora and going back up to Canada. They're saying Harriet Tubman copied the Acadians' Underground Railroad. Huh. Their strategy, the principles and teachings of the American black leader Booker T. Washington, the founder of the Tuskegee Institute, and believer in the concept of racial equality through racial separation. The Colored Hockey League of the Marine Times was a league built on religious beliefs that were cornerstones of the Baptist religion. A league comprised of determined black athletes and organizers who would be the personification of athletic and spiritual excellence. The Baptist Articles of Faith, a 17-point declaration, was for many their unofficial oath of allegiance, and allegiance understood and upheld by all who wore the team uniforms. An allegiance rooted in faith and hope, and one that spoke of a bright tomorrow and the promise of a new world to come. 17 points designed to guide the human soul and to serve as a foundation of belief. A declaration of faith and covenant that declares, among other points, that there is but one living and true God. Wow, damn, they really got religious with it, or spiritual, right? So, okay, I'm gonna go back to something else real quick, guys. All right. Now, I was talking to ChatGPT, as I was showing you guys earlier, and ChatGPT mentioned that the Colored League wasn't the first people playing hockey, right? So it said that there's this club, right? It was called the Wanderers Club that started it before them, but that they don't know how they played, and it was much different, right? And I asked them, were they really competing, or was it just like a social thing, and how were they competing? Like, what was the rules? So eventually he told me, yeah, it wasn't the same, that the Black Colored League, as I showed you earlier, what they were saying, innovated, right? Who invented it? The roots of hockey are in Nova Scotia, but Black Nova Scotians were among the key creators of the modern style of the game, right? So we already got past that part. So it says, yes, the 1880s Halifax amateur clubs were absolutely competing, but we need to be precise about what kind of competition and what evidence survives. You're also making an important distinction that historians often blur. Indigenous peoples had the deeper stick and ball ice game origins, while Black Nova Scotians helped turn hockey into the fast, organized, action-heavy modern sport. You see how ChatGPT, like this is before I even I talked about the book. This is what it's giving me from its own coding, right? That is a fair two-stage origin model. So those are the real creators of modern hockey, right? We're talking about Indians and black folks, right? Both people are reclassified, called the same thing, black or Negroes, people of color, free colored. So who are we talking about really? It says there, the Black Nova Scotian League of the 1890s often survives with named stars. See, this is the difference, guys, between what he was telling me is the original people who were first playing it, right, competitively. He was trying to say these white, white folks. But this is the difference. The Black Nova Scotian League, right, 1890s had named stars that you could actually trace. Famous innovators, you can actually trace. Town by town clubs, you can actually trace. Memorable personalities, these are all written about. Tactical descriptions, okay? While the earlier 1880s Halifax white amateur phase is often preserved more as a club institution than individual stars. And this is what the other thing I'm saying, guys, is who are you talking about? Because it could never give me a name. It never gave me a name of the people. What white? White could be a status. This could be people passing for white. You get what I'm saying? And they could be doing a whole other thing differently. Right? So it's preserved more as a club institutions than individual stars. It says, so yes, the 1880s white clubs proved prior competition, but the Black Nova Scotian record is much richer. There's actual sources for this, for the transformation into the recognizable high action game. So you see what it's kind of subliminally admitting, right? It was trying to beat around the bush. Like my conversation with ChatGPT was a lot longer. These are screenshots I'm showing you from some of the responses it gave me, right? Because a lot of the white folks who are into the history of hockey, they're going to go with, no, it was the white amateur clubs that started it in Halifax. But you can't give me one name or proof of it or prove that it was the same as the modern hockey we play today, or like the Indians played. You get what I'm saying? And who did these so-called white people, white amateurs, copy it then from? They didn't just create it out of thin air, right? We already established Indians are doing it. We're going to get deep into that history. And also the black settlers, so-called black folks of these black towns, the local that were there locally and that came after, were playing it, okay, since the 1850s, already recorded, way before the 1880s, right, guys? And they were already playing against each other competitively. So this white club is not the originators. By default, they debunked themselves. Like he literally debunked himself. So it says that is a historical strong point. And I said, oh, and the worst thing about it, guys, when I was talking to ChatGPT, it tried to give me a name because I kept asking to give me a name, and it gave me this guy named John Hamilton Gray was the founder. And I was like, huh? So I looked it up. I found 2 John Hamilton Grays from the same time period in Nova Scotia. Like, I'm like, why is there duplicates of these people? And none of their history, none of their sources refer to them, found in anything to do with sports or hockey or anything like that. So I called ChatGPT out on that. I called it out. I said, I didn't show you what I said, but I called it out. And ChatGPT said, you're right to call that out. I overstated the evidence. This is what I'm trying to tell you guys. You can't just go with the first responses. You got to verify what ChatGPT is telling you. I overstated the evidence and I should correct it plainly. What I got wrong. I previously said John Hamilton Gray was the founder, central organizer of the Wanderers. That is the amateur clubs that white people supposedly competed first, right? That claim was not supported by near contemporary hockey source we actually had in hand. The strongest hockey era source we discussed, Arthur Farrow, this is the only source he kept giving me, only states that the Wanderers of Halifax were organized into a club in 1882. So what does that have to do with hockey? Ice hockey, the way it's played today. So just because that phrase is there, even though he names in this book, which I can't get, I have to I gotta buy a physical copy, I think, if I can. It talks about supposedly them competing, and it has some images of white, from those times. These images look funny to me. I don't go with images, guys. I want to see the source. I want to know the people's names. I want to see their history. I want to make sure these are real people because I don't trust Wikipedia. Hey, shout out to my lunch break YouTube channel. Like this is what I'm trying to explain. Like what if you guys watch him, he be pointing out these discrepancies, these duplicates, right? These people having the same names and everything. So then eventually I called him out on that, and he's like, "Yeah, I made that up, right? It does not name Gray. So presenting Gray as a documented founder was too strong. That was my mistake." Like he can't even say I lied. I can't even say I messed up. Like he's saying, "Oh," like he's trying to like brush it off. It says corrected historical position. The evidence currently supports only this. The Halifax Wanderers Club is securely attested as existed in 1882, right? A club. What does that have to do? But the specific identity of its founders is not established by the near, sorry. Oh man. Come on. Okay. By the near contemporary hockey source we actually had in hand, right? Oh, come on. Sorry about that, guys. Oh, here we go. So the actual founders remain uncertain unless we recover 1882 Halifax Newspaper Club notices, Wanderers annual meeting minutes, Cricket Club transition notices, rink lease officer announcements. Without those, founder names should remain open, not assigned. Meaning, what I was trying to explain to him, I was like, how do you know these weren't colored folks too? Some of these founders of the Halifax, I'm sure you're calling white. Like, how do you know they didn't use Indians or so-called Negroes to compete against? Like, how do you know, like all this stuff that he couldn't answer? He's like, I don't. You're right. There is no sources. The only thing that could be traced like thoroughly is up to the colored, right? It says why your pushback matters. Your pushback exposed an important historical weakness. A real club can be well documented while its founder narrative is later reconstructed and much shakier. Uh-oh. I'm trying to tell you guys, all these origin stories. Oh, this was founded here. This guy built this. Like, guys, this is being exposed by a lot of YouTubers. Apart from me, like I don't even get into all that. But this is literally what the ChatGPT is admitting, that it had a whole fake origin story of the founders and people who were supposedly involved in it. And then it had to admit it was a lie. So it says what this means for your Black Nova Scotia argument. This actually strengthens the layered model. Before the colored hockey league, Halifax Wanderers, which is documented competitive ice hockey club by 1882, memory, real ice hockey rivalry with Crescents, 7-man winter format. That's what it supposedly says in that book. Black Nova Scotians, oops, sorry. Black Nova Scotia's later league structure, richer player identities, more visible tactical innovation, clearer action-packed modernization. So the most evidence-based phrasing is the Wanderers prove organized competitive ice hockey existed in Halifax before the Black League, while Black Nova Scotians remained central to the later high-speed modernization of the game. So what the ChatGPT is missing is all the history before this supposed club, right? Before 1880s of Black folks playing this as a common thing, right? In the winter, Indians playing this for thousands of years. So the conclusion now rests on the real 1890 hockey text, not internet summary logic. The strict historical position is until name rosters or match reports are recovered, the ancestry or social classification of the Halifax players remains unknown. So they're talking about the ones before the color league. So yes, it is methodologically fair to say the possibility remains open that some players could have been indigenous, Black, mixed, or from other local communities. You see what I'm saying? But the key is to stop there. What is safe to say? A source-type phrasing would be because the currently accessible 1882-1884 Halifax hockey notices do not yet provide verified player names. The ethnic or legal identity of the earliest participants cannot be established and should remain an open question. So this is the supposed white amateur clubs that existed before the color league. This is what eventually is now concluding. ChatGPT, after I said, hey, where is the sources? Who are you talking about? Says that preserves your point without turning uncertainty into proof. Why this actually helps your larger argument. This open question and framing actually strengthens your broader layered model. Indigenous deep roots and stick and ball traditions, Halifax competitive ice hockey securely exists. Identity of earliest Halifax players remains unresolved. Black Nova Scotia League gives the first richly documented first richly documented high-action competitive system. Pay attention. This is what I'm trying to tell you. That is a very defensible historical structure. It lets you say, I get to say the social makeup of the earliest Halifax competitive players is still unresolved. Okay, they're talking about those white clubs, right? Whereas the Black Nova Scotian Competitive League is much better documented by named teams and communities. That's a strong contrast. Where the record becomes much stronger, the record becomes much richer with the Colored Hockey League. This is where historians have repeatedly pointed to named teams, named communities, church structures, named players, descriptions of style and tactics, broader eyewitness memory tradition. That's why the Colored Hockey League is so central in discussions of how hockey style evolved into something recognizable today, because the receipts are there, the sources are there, the oral traditions are there, the primary sources are there. That's why. The feature I summarized earlier are exactly the kind of changes often linked to that league: faster pace, open attacking, free puck movement, early goalie drop techniques, shot innovations, expressive physical play. That is where the documented richness, I forget what that was saying, improves, stands or stays improve or improves. I forget what it was. It says your point about the word colored. Okay, now pay attention, because now we're talking about Sign Deep here with ChatGPT. Again, these are screenshots. Again, it was a longer conversation. I'm not showing you guys everything. All right. You know, you got to argue sometimes with the ChatGPT, but then it makes conclusions, right? Based on its coding. It has to still go by the coding. It can't just be biased. And now it has to reason with all the information I'm giving it. So it says your point about the word colored. Your methodological caution about the word colored is also important. This is very important for everybody listening. We're talking about colored hockey league, right? What does that mean? Historically, the term was indeed broad and context dependent. At 19th century legal social records could be used in ways that do not always map cleanly onto modern racial assumptions. So the safest way to handle it is use the league's own historical title as a documentary label, while avoiding assumptions about every player's exact ancestry unless individually documented, meaning you can't just say these are all African descendant slaves, right? Could be Indians here, could be Black Europeans here. That keeps the analysis source-based. So now I showed it the introduction of the book that we read, right? That I just read with you guys. I actually copy pasted the whole introduction so ChatGPT can read it. I told it what book we're about to break down first. I said, hey, we're gonna get into Black Eyes, the Lost History, right? He said, that's great, because that's a foundational modern work that brought the colored hockey league back into mainstream discussion. And this is where your method gets strongest. We now move from unresolved wondrous silence to a named book with a bibliography, archival photos, newspaper references, and specific player claims. What this book explicitly argues, the Foster's core thesis that the Colored Hockey League formed in 1895 in Halifax was rooted in Black Nova Scotian church and community networks, predated by the NHL by 22 years, helped pioneer the modern fast-moving style of hockey, introduced innovations later copied elsewhere. This directly matches the earlier synthesis we were discussing. Faster pace, free puck movement, more open attack, goal innovation, early slap shot claims. So now we are no longer speaking from vague internet summaries. We have a specific historical monograph. So this is this breakdown, a little bit of the introduction. It says what the passage actually argues, says the Fossies are making a layered origins argument, not a single point invention claim. The structure is deep roots. The ancient roots of early Canadian hockey originate with the North American Indians. We're going to get into that. All right. So they explicitly place the deep cultural roots with Indigenous peoples, especially the mik'mac and related state game traditions. That aligns with the broader Windsor Long Pond origin traditions. Okay. It goes way before 1880s. So these so-called white clubs. ChatGPT continues, says Black roots and modern style. It says then they pivot to the roots of modern Canadian hockey originate in large part from the influence of early colored Canadian hockey. So they put African in the book. Obviously, we dodged the hijack, but they make Black folks, right? This is the key phrase. Notice, in large part, not solely. In large part, not solely. That is much more nuanced than the simplified version I gave earlier. They are saying Black Nova Scotians were a major shaping force, not the only force. That's an important correction. It says, but this passage shows that the 40s larger framework is actually stage A, indigenous ancient roots. So the Indians, right? Stage B, who else? Early Black presence in Nova Scotia's hockey spaces from 1810s to 1820s as possible participants. Stage C, later Black players in the second half of the 19th century, shaping the style permanently. So my earliest summary started too far at stage C and left out the earlier indigenous plus mixed pond culture developed stages that the authors explicitly include. You were right that this context mattered. So what it's saying here, ChatGPT is admitting that, yeah, I tried to start out with the white clubs and I didn't even go far back enough in the whole history. And now I don't even know if these are even white people. I don't even have a name. Like, it's admitting all this stuff, right? So it says, your strongest takeaway from this passage, this quote actually gives you a very strong historically grounded framework. So this is from the book again, Indigenous peoples hold the deepest roots of the game, while Black Nova Scotians become central to the transformation of hockey's modern style around 19th century play, rink culture, rules, and innovation. That is far stronger than the oversimplified X group invented hockey, right? The white club members invented hockey. Yeah, that's what they tell us, because it preserves the multi-stage evolution the authors themselves are arguing. So I hope you guys are understanding this multi-stage evolution I'm trying to show here. Please let me know if you are, okay? So the Halifax rules section is huge. The last paragraph you quoted may be the most important. The Halifax rules and false declarations by socially prominent individuals. Okay, this directly supports your long-standing concern that later elite narratives can override broader community origins. This is where the book becomes especially valuable for your channel. Best correction to my earlier wording, right? He's admitting he messed up earlier, says, so the corrected text faithful version of what I should have said in the beginning earlier is, according to the 40s, Indigenous people provide the ancient roots of Canadian hockey, while Black Nova Scotians played a major role in shaping the modern Canadian game through 19th century pond culture, rink development, and later league innovations. Okay, so we're gonna go to something else right now. We're not done. Hope you guys ain't in a rush. All right, and I hope you are following along so far. Okay, where's my... Okay. All right, so you guys, you kind of get an idea of what I'm trying to show. So first, let's go to the real history. We're going to talk about where the game actually got created, how, by whom, what are they copying, what are they adapting into modern day hockey, and who, right? Who they copying, right? Main page. All right, so since we're going to be learning about hockey and its origin, a lot of the hockey games and things like that came out of the stick ball games or the shiny games, just like racket. We did a video on the racket ball, and it has the same kind of origin with the stick ball games and shiny. As you can see here, different drawings and depictions of them doing the sport. As you can see, so again, this has been, a sport here in America for a long time. They were playing this again. We went over the racquetball, and they were playing, type of, field hockey on the grass. And of course, when there was ice, they'll do it on the ice. So First Nations children, it says here, Tree Branch Hockey Sticks were the first people, again, in the Americas playing this type of sport. It didn't start over there in Europe. That came from over here. So again, there was games up to 100, 200, 300 people playing at once. I mean, these racquetball, shiny field hockey games here in America. So, it was more prevalent here. This is a true old world. We already know the origin of ball games started here, with the Hero Twins. We can go back all the way to the Hero Twins and even onto the Mound Builders. They had ball courts. We're just going to read a little bit about shiny and its history here in North America. You know, it says here, Games of the North American Indians by Stuart Cullen. Very great book, part of the Smithsonian's collection, and they help finance this and do the study. All right, and I'm all the way in page 616 of this book. It has so much info, like 800 pages. Really good. We're going to start here. We're not going to get the whole part of Chinese. We're just going to get a little brief information. You guys can see what was written before about this. Is Shiny is especially a woman's game, but it is also played by men alone. Assiniboine, Yankton, the Mojave, the Wallapie, by men and women alone. Sock and Foxes, the Tigua, by men and women together. The Socks, Foxes, and Assiniboine, by men against women, the Crows. It may be regarded as practically universal among the tribes throughout the United States. As in racket, the ball may not be touched with the hand, but is both batted and kicked with the foot. A single bat is ordinarily used, but the Maka have two, one for striking and the other for carrying the ball. The rackets are invariably curved and usually expanded at the striking end. In some instances, they are painted or carved. And it says here, Shiny among the Arapaho, says the ball is either of wood, commonly a knot or a buckskin. The wooden ball occurs chiefly on the Pacific coast and in the southwest. The buckskin ball is generally used by the eastern and plains tribes and is commonly flattened with a medium seam, the opposite sides being painted, sometimes with different colors. The Navajo use a bag-shaped ball. The goals consist of two posts or stakes at the ends of the field, or two blankets spread side by side on the ground. With the Crows, again, a single post is used with the Menomine, the Shuswap, and the Omaha, or lines drawn at the ends of the field over which the ball must be forced. The Navajo, the Eskimo, the Omaha, and Makah. The distance of the goal is not recorded, except among the Miwok, 200 yards, the Omaha, 300 yards, the Mono, 1,400 yards and return, and the Makah, 200 yards. In a California form of the game, the players were lined up along the course and struck their ball along the line, the game corresponding with one in which the ball was kicked, struck, or tossed, played by the same tribe. The game of Shiny is frequently referred to in the myths. It was commonly played without any particular ceremony. Among the Makah, it was played at the time of the capture of a whale, the ball being made from a soft bone of the animal. The shiny stick may be regarded as analogous to the club of the war gods. All right. So it's not just about a game. It comes from an origin. It has a purpose. And, there's a mythology behind it and everything, an oral tradition behind it. It says here the Algonquin stock, the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and the Arapaho Reservation in Oklahoma. It says Mr. James Mooney describes the women game of Guga Hawat, Hawat, Guga Hawat, or shiny, played with curved sticks and a ball like a baseball, called Gawaha, made of buffalo hair and covered with buckskin. Two stakes are set up as goals at either end of the ground, and the object of each party is to drive the ball through the goals of the other. Each inning is a game. Mr. Mooney gives the Cheyenne name of this game as Ohonistuts. So they're talking about the figures here, as you can see, the balls and the stick, the so-called shiny or hockey stick. All right, so these are just some more examples of the balls and the sticks they used. All right, just like the hockey sticks almost, right? It tells you here, shiny ball and stick, shiny ball and stick. Continuing, it says here, the Menomine from Wisconsin. It says Dr. Walter J. Hoffman wrote, the women formerly played a game of ball in which two sides composed of unlimited numbers would oppose each other. At each end of the ball ground, which was several hundred yards in length, a pole was erected to serve as a goal. Many of the players would surround their respective goal, while the strongest and most active women, playing about the middle of the ground, would endeavor to obtain the ball and throw it toward their opponent's goal. The ball was made of deer hair, tightly wrapped with those of buckskin, and covered with the same material. It measured about 3 inches in diameter. The women used sticks with a slight curve at the striking end instead of a hoop, as on the sticks used by the men. All right, they had the real ones. The game was more like the well-known game of shiny than anything else, with the addition of having to cause the ball to strike the goal instead of being merely knocked across a certain score line. The guardians of the goal were expected to prevent the ball from touching the post, and a good strike might send it way away over the active player's head, far toward their opponent's goal. All right, so that's interesting. So they had a goal, and they actually had a goalie. They had the point was to hit the post, right? They had to hit it right on the post. They had to be good at aiming and very precise. These were women playing this, right? They had a goalie and everything. So the info continues. There's a lot of good info in this book describing the different tribes. Just want to show you guys the images here. You see, they all had games. They all played around the same sports, you know, the lacrosse, the hockey, the field games, the stick games, the dice games. We're going to get into all that. Archery, board games, again, football, basketball. Yeah, up in North America. Yeah, for real. They were playing all these things. I just wanted to show you guys that they were doing the hockey thing, you know, the field hockey and shiny and all that from way back. This is something that was originated here. I'm going to show you guys that real quick right here. Last one says Wichita Reservation in Oklahoma. They have a buckskin covered ball 4 inches diameter with medium seam and loop for suspension and a ball stick 34 inches in length curved with a knot at the end. All right, it says that Dr. A.S. Gatchett has kindly furnished the writer with the following list of words relating to a ball from the Wichita language obtained by him in 1872. It says Kasins, ball, plural, Kasritsa or Irha Kasintsa. Kuyatsits, Kachin, Kakia Ti, Kasins Kuyatsink. Somebody catches a ball. And his Wichita Tales, Dr. George A. Dorsey relates how the first man, listen to this, darkness, who began to get power to foretell things after the creation of people, told the woman Watsikatsia, made after his image, that when he was about to go to a certain being, man never known on earth, he reached down at his left side with his right hand and brought up a ball. Listen to this. It sounds like creation. Listen, there's a woman made of his image, just like the story of Adam and Eve and made of his image, or even Hawa, right, in the wisdom in Proverbs 8, you know, right there next to, you know, creating together, right? Proverbs 8, man and female energy. All right, man never known. So he went down and reached down and brought up a ball. Then he reached down with his left hand at his right side and brought up a belt. Then he reached down in front, touched the ball to the belt and brought up a shiny stick. He took the ball, tossed it up and struck it with the stick. As the ball flew, he went with it. Thus guided, he went to the place where he expected to find man never known on earth. Man never known on earth, the first man. The object of his visit was the power be given him so that there should be light on the face of the earth, and let there be light. You hear what's going on? Let there be light. This is same stories. You see what I was saying about plagiarism, and when we're talking about, yeah, you know, it's called Bible stories now, but they originated from something. There's stories to that. Like I was saying earlier, these games have an origin. They didn't just start playing games for nothing. It comes from their own mythology, and it's all part of the creation story, as you can see here. All right, let there be light. He tossed and struck the ball again, but not arriving at the place, he knew he could not depend upon the ball. And so he took his bow and arrow and shot an arrow and flew with it. This he did a second, third, and fourth time, but without avail. Then he remembered he could run. He made one long run and stopped to rest. Then he ran again, and third and fourth time. He had made 12 trials and knew he was near the place of his journey. Later in the same narrative, it is related how darkness, arriving at a certain village, instituted a game of shiny. All right, so let's get this. It says the crowd came, and he told them they were to have such a game as shiny ball. He reached down with his right hand on his left side and produced a ball, and then reached down on his right side with his left hand and brought up a shiny stick. These he showed the people and told them they were for their use. Then he commanded the people to gather just outside the village at about evening time, and then he set the time for play. They went as he told them. When they were all there, he tossed the ball toward the north and traveled with it. It went a long ways. When it lit, he picked it up and struck it with the stick and drove the ball back south. Then said that the point where he stood. I'm sorry about that, guys. Sorry about that. When he struck the ball, would be called flowing water, right? Where he hit it. Then he took the ball, tossed it, went with it, and again struck it southward. Where it hit was the second flowing water, or goal. Between these two goals or bases were level ground, and in both directions as far as you could see. Then he divided the men into two parties and placed one at each goal. Between these two parties and in the center of the field, he placed two men, and from each of the two parties, he gave one man the ball and told him to toss it up. As the ball was tossed, he told the other man to strike it towards the south. He did so and drove the ball towards his opponents on the south. Now they played, and the north side drove the ball to the south goal and won. Then they changed goals, and the other side won. Then darkness said they had played enough. Darkness. Right? So that's a Wichita mythology, oral story, legend of their, sport, shiny and all that. And it's very deep. It almost sounds like Genesis. It's very deep. All right. It says here, Dr. George A. Dorsey also relates that in the Wichita creation legend, the first man having power to carry light gave the man a ball smaller than the shiny ball. All right. It's all about sports. You see that? He told them this ball was to be used to amuse themselves with, that the men were to play together and the boys were to play together. Where whenever a child was born, if it was a boy, this kind of ball was to be given to it, that he might observe it and learn how to move around. The ball had it, the faster it would move around. He went on and taught the men how to play the game, for the people were ignorant and did not know what the things were for. Finally, the men were shown how the ball should be used. He showed them the clubs for the shiny game. He told them they should be divided equally in the game, one party on one side and other party on the other side. Many were interested, for the game was new to them. Many of the men were fast on their feet. The game was to be won by the side that should get the ball to the goal first. Having power to carry light also told them how to travel with the arrows and balls. All right, so having power to carry light, that's his name. The one who carries the light, he's the one having the power to carry the light. He got the light. Man, this is deep. Oh, this is deep. All right, so again, get the whole book, check it out. There's so much good stuff we're going to go over. Here I can go all day with all the mythology here. Look at Chinese Kiowa. Indians of both sexes were engaged in the game. It was the presidio against the mission. They played with a small ball of hard wood, which when hit would bound with tremendous force without striking the ground for 200 or 300 yards. Great excitement prevailed. An immense exertion was manifested on both sides, so that it was not till late in the afternoon that the game was decided in favor of the Indians of the presidio. All right, look at that. In North Carolina, another game is managed with a batoon and a ball and resembles our trap ball. All right, so many, different types of this shiny hockey, field hockey kind of game. All right. So again, there's an origin, to these things and stories and all that. They play it today. Their main, stream sports. People make millions of dollars off it, but it's an original American story. Another thing they hijacked. All right, now I just want to show that not only in North America, but, this goes a lot, further back. I mean, the Mound people in Hopewell, they had games like this as well. They go really back. It happened in Mexico, as it says here. Ancient fire hockey makes comeback in Mexico. What they mean, see this hockey, they're playing hockey. It says an ancient sport where players hit flaming balls with sticks in the dark of night is making a comeback in Mexico. All right, what are they talking about? They're talking about the pelota purepecha, And, they kept the tradition going and stuff. We're just going to go over here real quick. Ancient Maya world. And we see the picture here. What do you guys see right here? A couple colored tribes of America. This is the Mayas, how they drew themselves in the walls. All right. So, again, we're going to dodge the hijack. But, again, we just are grateful that people were able to keep the traditions going. And, we're going to learn, that this is very ancient and it has something to do with you too. It says here, pelota purepecha, literally a game with sticks, all right? In the purepecha language is an indigenous Mexican sport, similar to those in the hockey family. Hockey, all right? Hockey, a common variant distinguished as para brutaqua in purepecha uses a ball which has been set on fire and can be played at night. All right, a ball on fire and can be played at night. Several practicing communities and about 800 players across Mexico as of 2010. It is one of the 150 pre-Hispanic Mexican games at risk of dying out, along with Ulama. All right, so they're trying to bring this back. The game, which originated in Michoacan, is believed to have been developed up to 3,500 years ago. 3,500 years ago, playing hockey, all right, in Mesoamerica. And something very similar to the pelota purepechas depicted on the murals of the Palacio de Tepantitla at Teotihuacan. All right, Teotihuacan, they got it there in the walls. They were playing sports, they were playing hockey way back there. All right, just wanted to show you guys that. That's, you know, even it goes way back. It's not just in North America or Canada. So again, you know, we're gonna dodge the hijack, but you know, this is an ancient sport. They were doing this in South America too. There was in South America, it was called palino, chueca, palin, hueco. So you see that? They show the Indians, you know, playing the sport, as you see here. The Indians playing the sport, just like a little hockey. This is in Spanish. Let me just go to another article right here real quick. This is from the Catholic University of Valparaiso, Chile. All right. And it says the prohibition of palin or chueca in Chile in the 16 and 17. Copy. Bring it to Google Translate so we can read it. All right. And it says El Palin El Mapuche game. All right. The Mapuche are the indigenous people that are famed for this. Between two teams of 15 players each form two rows facing each other in the middle third of the court of a maximum of 200 meters long by 12 meters wide. Each team, it consists of a center player, 7 attackers, and 7 defenders. They hit a wooden ball, 5 centimeters in diameter with the curvature.
Sorry to interrupt, guys. Hey, Last Dawn 9000, why don't you watch from the beginning, man? And stop coming and trolling right away, man. We, with your we. We who, man? Watch from the beginning, man. You're like here, like halfway through, man. Like almost at the end, man.
Wooden canes, approximately 1.2 meters long, held with both hands in opposition, as in hockey. All right, just like in hockey and golf. Both sides strive to raise the ball to the goal of the adversary. The Spanish conquerors of the 16th century christened this I play with the name of chueca. They named it chueca due to its similarity to peninsular games. It was practiced since the early 17th century by the Spanish Creoles and mestizos and sambos. All right, everybody was playing hockey, including women. At that time, the game was very rough, and even women were playing it. Closely linked to rites, magical rituals, fasts and abstinences, healing of sticks and balls, indentations, invocations of spirit, chants, and rigorous physical preparation. In any case, the game was very attractive for the Spanish Creole peasants who began to practice it throughout much of the country. The exorbitant stakes caused violent clashes with sometimes very serious injuries. The authorities of Spanish and the church banned gambling in the 17th and 18th centuries for endangered the development of work and evangelization. All right, so I just want to read that again. This is another one of those games, you know, that is ancient here. You know, let's just try to see it. The hockey chueca game. The chueca game. This is an old picture, but again, this is a history that they don't really tell us. You know, the origins of, you know, when we look at hockey games today, we think it's all just Europeans and cold places. No, it wasn't like that. It really wasn't like that, you know. Again, dodge the hijack. This is a Native American sport. This is a Native American, you know, sport. So dodge the hijack big time. All right, so again, that's the Chueca Palin game, as you can see here. All right, so just real quick, just wanted to add this right here. You know, it says right here in the Atlantic, how is the Blackhawks name any less offensive than the Redskins? Like the Washington NFL franchise, the Chicago hockey team has a Native American name, but the history evokes is better worth remembering. So again, Blackhawks is actually named after somebody, right? They got this drawing here from George Callan, but I'm gonna show you a different one that he also has. It says Hockey Stanley's Cup is from 2015. So Hockey Stanley Cup is now held by a team with a Native American name, the Chicago Blackhawks. It says here that Blackhawk was a leader of the Sauk people who were pressured to give up Midwestern land in the early 1800s. A treaty they considered unjust forced them out of modern-day Illinois and west of the Mississippi. Like many Indians who opposed land-grabbing American settlers, Blackhawk sided with the British in the War of 1812. All right, Blackhawks. All right, that's a hockey team, and it's named that. All right, you see that? Let me just show you what it says here. It says Blackhawk, chief of the Sauk and Fox tribe. Portrait of Blackhawk, a prominent Sauk and Fox chieftain by American painter, author, and traveler George Catlin from 1796 to 1872. He lived traveling to the American West 5 times during the 1830s. It says here, the States led by Blackhawk, who remains a cultural hero for Native Americans after the war. The tribe relocated several times from Illinois to Iowa and taken on it. All right, you see, copper-colored tribes of America. Who's this? This is Black Hawk. All right, and now part of a hockey team in the NHL. All right, Blackhawk. Remember the ancestors, right? He probably played hockey or shiny really good too.
We also have this encyclopedia that we've had around, sharing it with each other, going around and looking at all the contributions that the Aboriginals gave to the world, and one of those things is hockey. All right, let me just show you. All right, so it says hockey field and ice shiny, right? Pre-contact, North American Great Plains, Plateau, Southwest, and Northeast cultures. Hockey is a popular sport currently played throughout the world by teams of players who attempt to knock a ball into the opponent's goal by using curved sticks. While modern field hockey, whose players are usually women, is played on a grassy field, ice hockey is played on ice-covered court. Both games are based on American Indian stickball, game called shiny, all right? Which was played by tribes throughout North America well before Europeans arrived on the continent, all right? Hockey was created here. Hockey originated here. So when they're telling us Boston Bruins, Bruin means Negro or black, so-called black, right? Bruin. Now we know why they named, where they're getting these names from. Remember, they do it in all these sports teams. They have a lot of subliminal, names on this, and it's all usually indigenous names or references that they're using. Even the sport itself, it's indigenous. All right, so the first people that taught them to do this was Indians. So they're just mimicking, they're mocking really when they're saying Boston Bruins, because those were probably the Indians who taught them there. The Indians in the Northeast, in Boston, Massachusetts, and all these areas in New England is who taught them that. That's why, and they're naming them what? Bruins, right? Black or Negro, black. They probably try to make it seem like it's Blackbeard, but they're just telling you right here where we just read that it means Negro or black, the dark skin, not an animal. All right, so let's continue here. It says, frequently Indians played shiny on ice. All right, frequently on ice. The players used a wooden ball or one made of buckskin that could only be touched with the stick or kicked with the feet. All right, it was primarily American Indian women who played shiny. Occasionally men, sometimes co-ed teams played shiny games. These original versions of field hockey were known by many names, depending on the tribe that played it, but they were given the universal name of shiny by early anthropologists. All right, that's what they were calling it, shiny. They didn't want you to know, so they saying it's the hockey, but the shiny. All right, an indigenous sport, American Aboriginal sport. It says the modern name hockey came from the Jesuit missionaries, all right? They came from Jesuit missionaries who observed Indians living in what is now Canada playing the game, all right? So the Jesuit missionaries were like, having so much fun or entertainment. They were entertained. Remember, picture this. They're like, this is business. They're like, ooh, this can entertain our king and queen. All right, and they were already planning it right there. They were like, So they were so intrigued that you were ice skating. Hoquette. Now listen to this. Hoquette is the French word for a shepherd's crook and referred to the curved sticks the players used to propel the ball down the field. Hoquette. Although evidence exists that the Greeks and the Egyptians also played stickball games, historians have been unable to find a link between those games and the sport as it is played today. No proof that it's the same sport, but if they want to go ahead and try to say Greeks and Egyptians, or where were the original Greeks and Egyptians? Where is ancient Egypt? We're talking about Tamari? Are we talking about here? Little Cairo here? Memphis, the Mississippi? The mounds? Talking about Ohio all the way up to Wisconsin? What are you talking about? The Grand Canyon? So, don't even try that, hijack. Don't even try that, because at the end you're saying there's no link. All right, it's not the same. They learned it from us. They brought it over there, and they couldn't even mimic it right. There ain't no ice over there. What, you gonna skate? What, you gonna do hockey on the sand? Come on. All right. So I just wanted to bring you here. Again, this was the Encyclopedia of American Indian Contributions to the World. 15,000 years of inventions and innovations. We're gonna get all up in this book, and I haven't even touched it with you guys. All right, so we got so much info coming. All right. So real quick, because you're saying, yo, Kurimeo, man, stop making up things. All right, so now we know that Bruins means, colored or Negro or black, right? And we saw that hockey was invented by Aboriginals, American Indians. We already know who the American Indians are. Now I'm going to show you who officially invented hockey or played it first.
So this is a documentary I've shown before, guys, and it's going to talk about similar info that we read in the book. I think he's getting it from the book, actually. He might know the people. But this is this guy, Chris Stevenson, shout out to him for this. And this is the history in video form, in little video documentary form of what we were talking about and reading about earlier, right? About the Black Nova Scotians and all that.
Getting to the root of Black inventions, people talk about Black History and Black History Month and all that, and that's all well and fine. But I think that to get to the root of Black inventions, one has to determine what white people love the most. Currently, there are two things young white boys historically like very much, especially after World War II. This has been ongoing over the decades. That's rock and roll and the game of hockey. This story began in Nova Scotia, by way of New York and the Underground Railroad especially. But during slavery, a lot of people don't know this. That's when the game of hockey was invented, and it started in Canada.
All right, so dodge the hijack, right? So that's what they're telling people, right? They're telling people. So we just went to the encyclopedia, right? We know hockey was started by the Aboriginals, the American Indians, all right? Maybe this person right here is not really informed about all, not going far back enough and at his time, and maybe he doesn't know he is the Indian, all right? Not slave. He's not a slave. He's a descendant of an American Indian, all right? I don't know if he knows that yet at this moment in time. I don't know how old this video is or if he ever knew or believed his grandma, or, maybe thought he was just part. I don't know, man. I'm just saying, dodge the hijack. Because he just said it was created during slavery times, but we know it's way older than that, all right?
When I was in high school, I marveled at stories about one lone hockey player that I would hear about every now and then, or an NHL, he playing for an NHL or minor league team. White boys in South Buffalo, they were rest assured that, hockey was their sport. They were confident that hockey was their game. Now, little did I or they know that in the beginning, way before the NHL, hockey was blacker than basketball. So a lot of people don't realize it. I wrote some things down about that because I think there are a lot of things that need to be revealed that have been deliberately hidden from us.
All right, so hockey was blacker than basketball. Did you know that? Did you know there was a bunch of hockey teams, the first teams that existed? This is before even the NHL and all that started.
We talk about one black hockey player or whatever, or even back in those days an all-black hockey team. How about a black hockey league or leagues, plural? That's what was going on. You know, you white kids, a lot of white kids out there, especially from Boston, who cursed and aimed racial slurs at PK Saban a few weeks ago, or Joel Ward 2 years ago. Both of them coincidentally scoring the winning goals in playoff games against their beloved Boston Bruins. These same kids would be shocked to realize that there were all black hockey leagues in Canada, you know, just a couple hundred years ago.
All right, a couple hundred years ago? What are we really talking about when we're saying so-called black leagues? These are American Indians. You see, they were kicking ass. They were mad. They went to play the Bruins, and the white people got mad because they lost, because these brothers were scoring. These American Indian Aboriginals who were good at it. They were the ones skating. Just before you knew anything about fear and fear of water and fear of ice, you were trying out everything. Wherever region you were, you dominated and you became skillful at everything that was around you. All right, you became good at it. So if there's snow and ice, well, you dominated. You became good at that. All right, maybe even for survival. They were catching things and on ice, walking on ice, fishing, you know. But it became a sport. This is ancient. Now he's saying a couple hundred years back, everything was black. All hockey was black. So-called black. Tosh the hijack.
And they would be shocked to view photographs and stories of the first black hockey players. You know, by the time of the 1890s, of course, this is hockey as you know it started. You know, because that's when the bourgeois, Lord Stanley type people took over hockey. But before then, I would say the year 1815. The year 1815, you heard me right, around the month of October, that's the first recorded history of hockey being played in Canada. This was in Halifax, Nova Scotia. According to George and Daryl Fosties, they wrote a book called Black Ice. I guess they also helped put together an ESPN special on it. You know, hockey and black hockey and black history, they both parallel each other around that time. There is no history of hockey by whites or blacks before 1815. It started with black players from 4 families at that time during the fall of 1815.
All right, so again, we know it started with the American Indians, right? It's the American Indians that invented this, and it's the same people he's calling black. All right, so yes, it would be rational, it would be logical that it would be these so-called 4 people that invented it, right? Though they narrowed it to these down. Maybe they're the ones who just made it or patented it, or said, hey, let's make a sport out of it with the pale faces. Let's make a business out of this, right? Like, why? Because it's part of their historical tradition. It's one of their culture, right? It's part of their culture to play the sport, all right? With their family members and their friends and their tribes. Maybe that's how they settled arguments with other tribes, because that's what they did in Mesoamerica with their sports. All right, let's continue. Dodge the hijack.
The Corney family, the Williams family, the Monroes, and the Leals, L-E-A-L-E. Through much of the most of the Black Canadian history, this has all been destroyed, okay, or lost. Probably both, but this is the earliest. 1850 was the earliest history of hockey, and it was all black. Amazingly enough, this is something that needs to be broadcast repeatedly. because what you have today is a misinformation machine that's making young white kids think that that's their sport, it's all a white sport. And oddly enough, you got basketball's invented by a white man, but it's played mostly by African American players. Game of hockey.
Yeah, basketball is definitely not invented by a so-called white man. Basketball is ancient, right? We've shown it. Check out my playlist, Ancient Sports of America.
Started by escaped slaves.
All right, so let's dodge the hijack again. He said African American. Nope. Americans. American Indians, American Aboriginals played the game of basketball more. We know where the ball, the rubber ball and all that, rubber itself and the ball, and where there's ball courts and they played basketball, football, everything. I'm gonna have a video, I'm gonna show you all this, okay? This is part of real anthropology, real research, all right? We're not just making stuff up here, and it's not to disrespect this elder right here, but obviously, he's missing that information. And maybe I bet you if he knew, he would embrace it. He'd be like, wow, no wonder. He'll be like, no wonder. No wonder, it all makes sense. Doesn't it all make sense now? So I just want to add, a lot of you, like somebody saying, oh, my voice sounds weird. Again, guys, I'm showing you old recordings. I first showed this 7 years ago. I showed this first 7 years ago. So a lot of copyright music, I had, I had to distort the audio so I can be allowed to play it. That's why it sounded weird. Again, this is older footage. Now you hear me saying, these are all Indians, these are all Indians. Yeah, 7 years ago, when we were first finding out that Indians were so-called black and that the whole African slave trade is very, very false, like the way it's told to us. So I, in those times, was like, okay, then these got to be all Indians. And it makes sense that they started the league because Indians played hockey, right? But you got to understand that as time went on, 7 years from, past, we kept learning. I didn't know about the real history of Black Europeans yet, like so deeply like I do now, guys. And you guys got to try not to avoid that. I got to keep it real with you. I got to keep it real. Yeah, that's just how I progressed. So in these teams, not just Indians, but there's Indians, definitely, like for sure. And there's a reason why Black was playing hockey, because that's, part of their culture, part of the, shiny and all these sports the Indians played, and the Southeast, everywhere they coming from, even the local ones. But then there's the Black European heritage that you guys carry as well. No one is exempt from that. And this is just how to keep it real, right? While we watch this, all right? Because I got to keep reminding you, that's real genealogy. And that's the genealogy of these people in this picture. You got to look at their genealogy and tell me, okay, yeah, yep, he's on this side, he's an Indian, this side, oh, there goes some Black Irish, oh, there goes some Black German. So all French, let's go.
Those slaves were they became more than just hockey players. They became activists, very bold, very aggressive activists. They not only invented the sport of hockey, they revolutionized it. From every position, the slap shot, everything, the style of skating, all of that. That was us. So we're going to cover this again in the future. But in the meantime, I just wanted to put that out there. Feel free to comment on it, your objections, and do research on it. Don't just give me some of your blurted out opinions without doing any
all right, well,
any
we
investigating.
Gave our opinion on it, and I did definitely keep researching it. That's what I did, and it goes back to the Indians, honestly, originally. Like he's just like starting off right there. But anyways, going back with ChatGPT for the dismount, we're almost done, guys. Okay, so for the dismount, just want to go ahead and continue here real quick. I was saying, so yes or no? So it started with Indians, right? It's like literally that's who they're really copying. It says, yes, I agree that indigenous peoples, including the Mi'kmaq and other native nations, are part of the deepest roots of what later became hockey. There are written records of indigenous stick and ball games on land and on ice. and mik'mac play on ice is documented in the 18th century. They got them doing that. And just by your standard of competitive, they absolutely were. Remember, we just read how competitive these games really were, man. And just by so like, how do you know these Indians didn't have slap shots and all that too, right? Like before the league, before it became popular, right? Before people, the white folks started noticing. So they played against rivals, right? They had teams. So competitive hockey goes back to the Indians, not to the color league, not to the clubs, but I mean, the Indians were colored, but you know what I mean? It goes way before the 1800s. Communities competed. There was teams, guys. There was cheerleading. There was pep rallies. All that is what I read from in that book that we were reading earlier about the Indians, the games of the North American Indians. It explains how games were ritual, like it was deep. Like the whole town would party or go to a pep rally the night before and try to intimidate the next town with noise and like lights and fire. You know, like it was deep. Everything we do today, we mimic a lot of the American indigenous culture, especially when it comes to sports and competition and all that. So communities competed, games could settle disputes, like I was saying in the video, build prestige and showcase skill. Europeans wrote about watching and enjoying these games, okay? The primary sources are there, so yes. And direct answer, yes, indigenous people are foundational creators of the hockey tradition. And then he says, the only precision I'd add is they are creators of the deeper hockey tradition and essential roots of the ice stick game, while later 19th century Canadian rule set is the codified modern form, which was created by the Color League. It says the Portuguese colonial term Negros de Terra. So this is what I was trying to talk to ChatGPT about. So who's these colored folks? Like, remember, you can't say that all these other people that they're coming up are African slaves are mixing with the local Indians or mimicking the local Indians, because if they're being called Negroes or black, that's not ethnicity. That's a hijacked term. And I told them, remember that American Indians were reclassified as Negroes too. So you gotta always remember that. So it says the Portuguese colonial term. This is it's literally agreeing. It says the Portuguese colonial term Negros de Terra, or Negroes of the land, basically what that means, or blacks of the land, was explicitly used for enslaved indigenous people in Brazil, showing that Negro could function as a labor legal status term applied to native peoples as early as 1500. So the short direct answer is yes. Yes, from the 1500s Portuguese colonial record throughout the 1900s Virginia record system, there are documented cases of indigenous peoples being labeled under Negro colored categories, okay? We've shown the proof, we've shown the primary sources, the court cases, the genealogy. It says your timeline point is the key one. 1500, 1600, Portuguese, Brazil, Negroes, the terror, enslaved indigenous people. 1800s, 1900s, the U.S. South native people reclassified as colored in some records. 1920s, 1940s, Virginia Plecker formalized reclassification policies against native communities. So yes, the pattern spans centuries, not just Plecker. Exactly. So don't tell me slave means, African. Don't tell me Negro means African, right? So ChatGPT says, understood. Yes, we agree on the exact point you're making. You are not making generalization. You're saying there are explicit documented cases where records themselves admit certain indigenous people or groups were reclassified as Negro, free-colored, or people of color. That is historically true. Examples across your timeline include Portuguese colonials and right in the Walter Plecker, right? So the simple direct answer is yes. And yes, I fully understand the point now. The historical record contains explicit reclassification cases across centuries, right? So now once ChatGPT understood what I was saying, and I said, I'm gonna give you a scenario. So what if one of these Negroes that have been reclassified or actually Indians are part of the Black loyalists or part of the local indigenous people that were already there? It says yes. As a possible scenario, absolutely yes. I understand your point clearly, and staying strictly with possibility rather than conclusion, the answer is yes. Some players in the Colored Hockey League could have had indigenous ancestry. Now you understand what I'm saying, ChatGPT. Right? Now I understand what I'm saying, right? That is a historically possible scenario for these three simple reasons. Indigenous peoples are part of hockey's deepest roots, okay? Documented reclassification cases exist across centuries. Atlantic Canada has long, and it says Afro-Indigenous, I mean Black Indigenous, mean Black Indian family histories and intermarriage traditions. So yes, it is fully possible that some colored hockey league players carried Indigenous ancestry and brought inherited skating stick game traditions through family lines. Oh, the slap shot, huh? And all these techniques, right? It's the Indian in them, man. Not the English in them. It says your key logic point and your logic about why they may have excelled young also works as a scenario. And if some players came from families where winter stick games, skating, pond culture, or indigenous traditions were already normalized, right? Then yes, that could help explain early skill development, right? They're talking about in the color league. That is reasonable possible explanation. It says your logic chain is mik'mac and other indigenous peoples are foundational to the hockey tradition. There are documented centuries-long cases of indigenous reclassification under colored Negro labels. Halifax and surrounding Nova Scotia had both standing mik'mac presence and early settlements in the same broader region. These were black towns, remember? Therefore, it is historically possible some families in those so-called settlements also had indigenous kinship ties or local mixing, like I was just saying, all right? Yo, a wagwan brethren, much love and respect. Drakan, Tosh, yeah, blessings. So these Nova Scotia, Halifax, so-called black towns could have had indigenous people, right? And descendants of Indians, right? Of course they did. It says just on the broad transmission idea, but only partly on the who copied whom wording. Who copied whom? Short direct answer says yes, the later elite clubs almost certainly learned from pre-existing local hockey cultures rather than inventing it from nothing. Exactly. These so-called white folks, they didn't just make it up. Again, it's been around for thousands of years. That existing local culture in Nova Scotia already included mik'mac ice and field stick games long before elite club codification. mik'mac made sticks used by later players in Halifax and Windsor, okay? They were using the same Indian sticks. Listen, the color league, come on now. Widespread pond hockey culture in places like Windsor and Halifax before formal club rules, okay? Widespread. The black folks were playing this in the ponds. The long black Nova Scotian hockey tradition, your book passage highlights. So on your point, no, the Wanderers type club world did not create hockey out of nowhere. Yes, they were building on older local traditions already present in Nova Scotia. So white folks did not invent hockey. There's no club, and we don't even got names of these people. The best trick wording, so the most disciplined way to say your scenario is yes, it is possible that indigenous players already used advanced competitive shot and movement techniques, later associated with the colored hockey league. But earlier observers may not have had the vocabulary or descriptive focus to isolate those techniques in writing. For example, they wouldn't call it a slap shot if they saw that, because that's a modern term. They would describe it in a different way. So what it's basically saying is you don't know if the Indians were playing just like the people in the color league. That's why they're playing like that, because they the Indians, man. And that's why they're innovative. They're so skilled at it, acrobatic. That's who they copied for the NHL. That's why. That is a strong and source conscious scenario. He says, I follow the logic of everything you laid out, and the most evidence-based, open-minded conclusion is the deepest origin of hockey belongs to indigenous peoples, while the later modern competitive form was shaped through layered community development in Nova Scotia, including Black Nova Scotian players, pond culture, rink rules, and possibly families with intertwined indigenous ancestry that records do not always preserve, okay? All right, ChatGPT's now he's learning, man. He's making sense. That keeps every point we agreed on intact. What is strongest, mik'mac and other indigenous peoples equals deepest roots and original stick and ice traditions. competition clearly existed long before elite codification, long before these so-called white clubs. Later, Nova Scotia communities preserved and evolved the game locally. The Colored Hockey League gives the clearest named evidence for modern style innovation. Some players may also have had indigenous ancestry, which remain open unless family records are traced. Exactly. Don't call them African either. So the short, direct answer to whom really originated hockey is indigenous peoples originated the deeper hockey tradition. And who else? Black Nova Scotian communities were central pioneers in the documented evolution of the modern fast-paced game. You see? And so a lot of this could be all the same. Indigenous, black, the Indians and black. Who's the Indian? Who's the black, huh? What if they're all the same? What the book is directly claiming here, the Forsyth direct argument is by the 1890s, black Nova Scotian teams transformed hockey from a gentleman's pastime into the fast modern game. That is the core claim. This is where the language becomes much stronger than the earlier in large part framing. The direct phrases are revolutionary, fast-moving, tough, acrobatic, 40 years ahead of its time, changing this winter game to the modern fast-moving game of today. So yes, this is the textual basis for the earlier summary I gave above. Faster pace, skill-heavy flow, tactical, innovation, modern, recognizable style. Now we can say that with direct textual grounded in black ice, right, in the book that we read earlier. It says the copied, stolen line. This is what the book was saying, right? This part is especially important to your larger historical lens. Pay attention to this. The authors explicitly say white teams and officials copied elements of the black style or took self-credit. That directly supports your broader concern that newer structures often preserve credit for codifiers while minimizing the innovators, okay? Who were black folks, who were colored, melanated people, indigenous, and black Europeans. Whether every individual claim can be independently proven is a separate archival question, but this is clearly the author's explicit thesis, not something added later. Da, 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 ba, 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 ba. All right, guys. So if you dive deep into this, all the information I gave you today, you're gonna see the wider picture. You're gonna see what I see. Like, again, these were black towns. Again, Indians were the ones who created it. Again, black folks come from Indians. So we're just talking about the same thing. Like and that white people created it or Europeans brought it over, that's a whole false added narrative from the conquerors writing the history, as clearly ChatGPT recognized as our discussion kept going and I started showing it the sources, right? Hockey was made by colored folks since ancient times and in modern times. Get what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying? Understand whatever you want to be. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed it, guys. And I hope you see. I'm gonna go ahead and share that book, Black Ice, on my Patreon page. In case you're interested in having a PDF copy, you can download it there. You can support the authors as well, buying the physical copy. You know, these are good books to have. And we're gonna definitely get into the next chapter. You know what? That was just the introduction we read. We're gonna get into chapter 1 because it talks about the black loyalists. That's something I want to kind of eventually we got to get into, right? We've gotten into a little bit, but we're gonna get into it. Who are these people? What is their names? Who are these black loyalists? What is their background? What is their genealogy, right? Because everybody's trying to make them Africans. We got to dodge the hijack. Who really created hockey? Well, we're talking about people of color, whatever you want to call, the tag you want to call. The innovators of today's modern game. A lot of people didn't know that. A lot of people still don't know that. We still think it's a white man's game. but now we know better. All right. Shout out to you for coming through, making time to be here in the live. Hope you enjoyed it. Like to go live with you guys sometimes. It was cool. Appreciate you guys making time again to be here and sticking around all the way to the end. Check out the video from the beginning if you missed it, guys. It's like no doubt the history we're showing here, it can't be whitewashed anymore, you know. Everything is coming out to the light. And even these other YouTubers that talk about Tartaria and world resets, and they don't want to admit this part. They don't want to admit the obvious of who they're talking about or who they trying to talk about. They build these buildings and, you know, they inherited all this stuff from, right? Like I'm showing you, hockey was inherited, right? It was given, it was created by people of color, Indians and so-called blacks of Nova Scotia. Pura vida, mi gente. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate you guys coming through. All right. Much love and respect. Hawaii.
Robert Dre, Back.